company is Better Place, their product powering electric cars, their vision, a world without oil.
Very esteemed guests. We have with us Dr. Vedi. He's the Dean at SPGN School of Global Management and our mentor. Mr. Tarun Vaidya, he's the Solutions Analyst at Gravity Labs. Hi, Tarun. And we have Mr. Gurtejbir Sandhu. He's a Senior Consultant at EY.
Today, we'll take you through our strategy on how we can reinvent Better Place and ensure that the vision that once was will always carry on.
A bit more research into who are the local players there, like very specific into the micro level players, what they are doing there, because like you all are aware, Sweden, Norway and Finland have very high concentrated EV ownership. So you're
start with a new identity of Better Place, who will now transform itself from a B2C to a B2B company with a main focus on using their prior expertise and experience in building, managing and maintaining EV charging stations to build charging infrastructure for electric vehicles across.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Allan Manzi, and today I and my team, Aditya and Sakshi, will be presenting on our case speech for Better Place reopening. This is our agenda today. Starting off with a Better Place background, it was launched in May 2007 by Shai Agassi and partners. It was valued at $1.1 billion after the Series B funding. The Renault-Nissan partnership publicly established Better Place as the fifth largest startup in 2007. Better Place proposed lower total cost of vehicle ownership from its motor concept while providing an alternative to internal combustion engine vehicles. Better Place expanded to Denmark and Japan through government partnerships and also ultimately became bankrupt in 2013 after failing to deliver on their model concept. Moving on forward to the business model, they installed battery swapping stations required to supply power and facilitate the battery swapping technology. The model concept was swapping depleted batteries with new charged ones, which cut down on the time it would take to fully charge the vehicle. The concept model was also critical in partnering with an auto manufacturer by designing electric vehicles compatible with swappable batteries model at a reasonable cost. They also owned batteries and rated them to vehicle owners while lowering the cost of these vehicles. Moving on to the Israeli electric vehicle industry, Stordot is a lithium-ion battery company started in Israel in 2012 that has recently unveiled a 5-minute charge EV battery. RE specializes in electric vehicle technology that enables powered flat and modular chassis and suspension systems for the electric vehicles. Tax incentives by the Israeli government, such as the green tax reform, has been formed to expedite the electric vehicle mass adoption in Israel. Tel Aviv City implemented the electric road pilot program for public routes in September 2020, an initiative by the city to reduce pollution. Chakratech uses kinetic energy storage technology to power these vehicles with unlimited high power charge and discharge cycles. Lastly, Israel aims to fully adopt electric vehicles by 2030. Moving on forward to a proposed re-entry strategy for Better Place, we recommend initial launch in Israel by partnering with the government through financial incentives by monetizing on the government tax benefits and initial implementation in the public transportation market. So Better Place could partner with the government and make use of the public transportation market. Our target market is the public market for the first phase and second phase after the success to the private sector in Israel. Our financial strategy is the low total cost of EV batteries due to the rental options, and lastly, expanding into countries that are heavily reliant on public transportation. I'll be handing this to Sakshi to further discuss the Porter's Fire Forces model.
Thank you, Allan. Now, in order to evaluate the effectiveness of this big idea, Porter's 5 forces would be discussed briefly to understand the competitive environment and to accordingly adjust our strategies to further improve the potential profit and sustainability of our model. Beginning with the strongest force, that is competitive rivalry, Better Place has a significant number of indirect and direct competitors present both in the local market of Israel as well as on an international level, some of whose products also aim to eliminate the purpose delivered by Better Place, which include examples of companies such as Ample and Neo Batteries. Now, in such case where the rivalry is so intense, Better Place can attract customers with economical prices, high impact marketing campaigns, and being heavily reliant on favorable government policies. Moving on to the suppliers' power, who have a moderate impact on Better Place value proposition, which includes stakeholders like government, Ministry of Transport, auto manufacturers, and battery manufacturers. They do have a moderate impact on the product policies and price policies offered by Better Place. However, the buyer's power seems to exceed here by a significant pace, as due to the intense competition in the EV market and re-establishment of Better Place in the target segment, buyers would initially hesitate to trust Better Place model again. However, with the limited number of purchases and customers that Better Place is able to interact with, we can further regain that trust and offer them better customer sales and after sales services, which can further help us with goodwill and regenerating the word of mouth marketing. Moving on to the threat of substitution and threat of new entry. Threat of substitution exists with the plug-in electrical vehicles and the innovative battery technology that could be charged within 5 minutes, which again seems to eliminate the purpose of Better Place, but they are expensive technology who do not threaten the profitability model of Better Place as of now. And the threat of new entry, as stated, that since 2004, various number of startups as well as auto manufacturers have started introducing technology in the EV market. A high intense competition exists. However, the government support can be limited here by making the Israeli government trust Better Places model and further continue in the future with our product offerings only. Moving on to the STP model of Better Place. Allan, next slide, please. Yeah. So we have 3 main customer segments, that is environment conscious customers, early adopters, and public transport vehicles. So we intend to target the public transport vehicles, the taxis, and the carpooling services in the private sector in our initial phases. And our positioning strategies around them would be to increase the dependency and comfort offered through Better Place electric vehicles and swappable batteries. And marketing mix strategies, as stated here, can be clearly explained with highly being relevant on promotional strategies, that is with the use of online media and services as well as transit advertising. Moving on to the commercialization strategy. Now, we have laid out a 5-year plan for Better Place, wherein we intend to first partner with the Israeli government, gain that trust in terms of tax incentives and increasing the tax imports on the gasoline-driven vehicles, and then further launch the implementation by transforming the public buses into electric buses, further reducing the infrastructural costs of charging station by limiting only to the number of public bus stops, and then later on targeting the individual consumers who would who fall in the middle income consumer group and would be more relevant to switch to electric vehicles. And our future implementation plans would be further explained by Aditya, who would detail it out in Singapore and Tokyo. Moving on to the last, that is the detailed positioning strategy of Better Place, would be, Allan, next slide, would be centered around both public sector and private sector. And as mentioned, we would focus on economical consumers. Over to Aditya, who would further explain the challenges faced.
Now I'm going to talk about business model canvas of Better Place. Starting with key partners, we'll be partnering with governments, car manufacturers, battery manufacturers, and insurance companies. Why governments? Because we'll be focusing more on the public sector first. Public sector in the sense like public buses, and government-based taxis. And so we'll be partnering up with these and going to a value proposition. Our value proposition is easy battery swapping, energy efficiency, low costs, and high performance of batteries. In the EV market right now, like we have like a big issue of range, but with Better Place, there won't be any problem with the ranges because the battery swapping is like very easily done in today's world. And coming to customer segments, we'll be targeting public sector, consumers of public transport, consumers of government taxis, and private sector green buyers and early adopters and people on the go. Like, yes. So in cost structures, like we have costs of manufacturing the stations, infrastructure development costs, R&D costs, employees, and maintenance costs of the station. And going to revenue streams, we will have a subscription of swapping of yearly and monthly. Then we'll be having another revenue stream by revenue sales, after sales services. Then we'll get a royalty from car manufacturers as a revenue. Next slide, please. So our expansion plan will be first based on Israel from 2021 to 2023, 3 years in public transport and next 2 years in direct consumer. If it's successful in Israel, then we'll be moving on to Singapore and Tokyo, expansion in the same rate of 3 years in public transport and 2 years in direct consumers. Why Singapore in the sense? Because most people in Singapore they mainly depend on public transport in terms of transportation. So, and it's very small to cover the battery swapping station, so it will reduce the costs. And Tokyo, because Israel has, Better Place has already put a name as battery swapping, one of the best battery swapping companies in Tokyo in the past experience. So people will be believing them when they come there again. Next slide, please. Our challenges will be finding an alternative for lithium batteries, because all batteries are made by lithium in cars. So using lithium batteries will be is not a green activity to do. It'll be a lot of carbon emission, and electricity generation through renewable resources, because most countries are focused on coal and natural gas for electricity. So this would be contradicting our vision. So we'll be building a renewable source of energy and building trust again, since it's already failed before, and building the infrastructure as there are very less resources. Next slide. In recommendations, building up a renewable energy around the swapping stations, developing a faster swapping technology, focusing more on the public sector first and then going to private, to direct consumers, then partnering up with governments, developing connections with car manufacturers, and building up a universal battery of all types. Like building up a universal battery of all types will help Better Place to easily switch, and it'll decrease the inventory costs in easily switching the batteries. And next slide. So these are our references from the internet. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, everyone. Our group consists of me, Mehrangez, Aryan, and Nimish, and our agenda is as follows. The background, business strategy, global demand, re-envision business model, the demand in China, SWOT analysis, and the recommendation and conclusion. When the founder of Better Place, Shai Agassi, first introduced Better Place, his vision was to end the world's dependence on oil. His whole business model was based on how Better Place expected the cost of electricity to be cheaper than the cost of gasoline. In 2007, Better Place was publicly launched as the 5th largest startup of all time and even went through 3 rounds of funding. It rapidly expanded to 6 countries, including Japan, where the first test program was done. However, when the company failed to deliver on its sales promises, investors had to fire Shai Agassi as the CEO, since he was not as good as they thought he was at managing the business. Now Mira will move forward with our strategy.
Thank you, Wazifah. Agassi value proposition was exciting, but the fundamental part of it was the difference in cost of electric vehicle was minimal. The core value proposition and business model unsupported the operation model. Let me walk you through business plan very quickly. Better Place key activities were partner relationships, build and manage swap and charge station, look for new subscribers, and develop maintain of batteries. Talking about partners. Better Place partner were governments, Denmark, Australia, Japan, US, and Canada, electric cars manufacturer Renault, investor, and local suppliers. To expand, Better Place resources go smart grid and in-car software, swap station, and charge spots. Customer segments were people interested in have electric vehicles and companies with a car fleet. Cost structure. Cost structure is about swap station and charge spots, electric energy and batteries, structure and development, and human resource teams. Their revenue streams worth $350 monthly per car due to their subscription model. One of the reasons why this startup is failed because Better Place requires innovation across a broad front, cost cutting to the point where electric vehicle could be as cheap as gasoline powered and better infrastructure around recharging. However, this company gave starting point to the world. The global demand of electric vehicles market is growing and increasing adoption rate across the globe. There is a lot of favorable policies, incentives, and subsidies to support this growth. Moving on, Nimish. One more slide, Nimish. Thank you. Moving on, we want to present our revised business model. Nimish, sorry. Yeah. Our model focus on consideration of the business.
I'm so sorry to pause you here. I think one of our members actually disconnected. Nimish, are you there? Hello? So can you just... Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, Nimish, can you just roll back the slide? Can he continue back? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Nimish.
Consolidation resource, repositioning the firm and revenue growth. And now Nimish will take it forward. Please, Nimish.
All right. So the first step in our repurposed business model consists of consolidation of the business. So the first step will be exiting all the international markets the company already exists in, liquidate all its assets. All right, I'll continue. Exiting all the international markets it's already in, halting its construction of replacement stations, and consolidating funds and in the market it already has and liquidating all of it. The risks that are involved in this would be that the sale of assets, mainly real estate and infrastructure, would be very time consuming. And it may not take place as soon as possible and there will be delays. What we can do to avoid these risks is to add buffer in the timeline that we're planning on the project. And the timeline we require is approximately 2 quarters of financial year, but we cannot give a definite estimation.
So I'll be taking on the second part, which is redefining the strategy of Better Place, right? So how we began, like, Mehra began with what the previous business strategy was. Wazifah spoke about, what is the entire vision. And then you had, the Nimish talking about the first pivotal step, which was building and consolidating the business. They're in too many markets at the same time, which is really harmful for them. And they can't really plan and strategize. So basically the first step and building onto the first step of consolidating the funds, it's a big jumping board to what we want to do in the future. Now, the second plan and redefining the strategy is extremely pivotal, is we do not want to manufacture cars or associate with car manufacturers in the production aspect of it, right? We want to focus only on the third-party replenishment centers. And why we selected this is after consolidating our business, we looked at several industries globally and several economies, and we narrowed down on China. Basically, it's having a 55% growth, and more on it will be elaborated later. But basically, I will stick to the second part, is we will completely get rid of collaborating and building with firms and focus entirely on the third-party auto ancillary business of the Better Place. So basically, the charger networks around China is something that entirely the companies own and operate. Correct. There is no third party involved, and especially in the battery replacement sector, there is nobody. In the United States, you have Electrify America, EVgo, which collaborate with car companies to help build networks and in turn create further and further sales for the vehicles with a greater network. So it's like a value addition for both these issues. So there can be certain risks involved, which are, because they wouldn't see the value in it. So if not, there's a tier 1 Neo, there's a bunch of tier 2 and 3 where we can build and go and outperform our clients. This will take a period of 1 to 4 financial years, because you cannot put a time span, because replacing batteries is no third party does it. It's a very competitive advantage that Better Place brings. No other company in the world does it. So there's no a particular time span or roughly a model that we can put to it. And building onto this third party auto ancillary business, we will move on to the third step. Is in the third step, after the revenue growth, if it is even achieved, if we can build back from all the bankruptcies that Better Place had to offer, and so what we want to do is we want to take that free cash flow and invest it into other emerging markets. Now we want to put a strict criteria that these markets will only go to if there is a very high amount of EV growth, high amount of replenishment service growth. And if only both are there, we will move ahead to grow our business. So really focusing on one vertical, profitable businesses, getting rid of everything, trying to create a cross-functional and value addition to everything. There is also risks involved in this, and these are the risks of putting these structures involved to build on it. In the next slide, we'll take it from there.
All right, so I'll be talking about why we chose China as our target market. So our market research shows that electric vehicle market in China has increased exponentially in the past decade. Restrategizing the business to be deployed in China is critical for the company. 41% of the global EV sales come from China. Secondly, the market is currently at a development stage of only 6.3 of all vehicles being sold being electric. The number is estimated to grow by 9% towards the end of the year. The major growth is driven by major subsidies given by the industry to foster its growth in China. 50% of the growth, there's been 50% of growth in the market, even though the market penetration has only been 4%. This shows that there's massive growth potential in the market. Wazifah will be talking about the SWOT now.
So our SWOT analysis revealed the following. The strength are that we will be able to make higher quality decisions, be profitable quicker, and minimize further investment by shareholders. Since profitability was a major issue for prior investors, closing all the stations in irrelevant markets would save so much money and bring in profits quickly. Our main weakness would be that the cost structures and revenue margins cannot be accurate across the stations. However, we do have opportunities as well. As mentioned before, China's GDP is recovering and sales potential are much higher. Finally, the main threat would be if third-party energy providers like EVgo and Electrify America, which have much more experience than us, expand to China, we could be forced out as a startup. We could also have a delay if liquidation takes longer than expected. And now Aryan will talk about the recommendation.
Yes, to quickly conclude, our first step is consolidating resources, sell all your assets globally, and focus entirely on this emerging market, which is growing crazily, is China, repositioning the firm from battery as a service to the entire replenishment as a service, and then focusing on revenue growth to grow on other emerging markets. Thank you very much. We're the last to present. Have a great day ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Priyanka and my team members are Abhimanyu, Srinidhi, Adil and myself. And we are A Square Consultancy. When the pioneers of the electric vehicle revolution had suffered a fall from grace, our hopes of a better place never died. Today, we'll take you through our strategy on how we can reinvent better place and ensure that the vision that once was will always carry on. Before we begin, we'll take you through the agenda for the next 9 minutes of our presentation, the first being the literature review, followed by the business plan, roadmap for the future, framework analysis, recommendations, and finally, the conclusion. So let's start with a little background about Better Place and its journey. Better Place received close to $110 million, kickstarting its public launch as the 5th largest startup of all times. Their main USP was swappable batteries, which at that time was an incredible solution for the charging time for EVs, with main focus on developing battery switching stations. In a span of 5 years, Better Place expanded worldwide into Japan, Hawaii, Denmark, Australia, and Canada. However, they only sold fewer than 1,000 cars. After 5 years, they burned through $812.5 million in funding and failed to deliver on its sales promises. Now you all may be wondering how a company can make a comeback from this unforgettable scar. Well, I now hand it over to Abhimanyu to outline the vision for Better Place.
Thank you, Priyanka. All hope is never lost, and with the business plan that I'm about to outline, Better Place and its image as the pioneers of electric vehicle revolution can most certainly be revived. Let's start with the new identity of Better Place, who will now transform itself from a B2C to a B2B company with a main focus on using their prior expertise and experience in building, managing, and maintaining EV charging stations to build charging infrastructure for electric vehicles across India, as well as provide software solutions which will efficiently integrate the charging network into the organization system. The problems that currently exist are the lack of widespread EV charging infrastructure, the lack of technical expertise, and the extremely high cost of setting up an EV charging infrastructure. All this, coupled with an outdated software for infrastructure integration, has slowed down the growth of EV industry in India. Keeping this in mind, Better Place will use their pre-existing and well-established expertise in building EV charging infrastructure and providing software solutions to tackle the widespread problems in the EV industry in India. Our proposed initial target market will be Bengaluru, which is widely renowned as the Silicon Valley of India, and continue to expand into metropolitan cities and the rest of India in phase 2 and phase 3. Better Place will generate revenue through infrastructure building, maintenance of the infrastructure, and licensing and providing software solutions. Which then brings me to the roadmap we have envisioned for Better Place. In phase 1, we will establish Better Place's capabilities and cement our brand name in Bengaluru, following which in phase 2, we will roll out our services simultaneously to New Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Hyderabad. Phase 3 is where we'll establish pan-India presence to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Now I'll hand it back to Priyanka to take us through our detailed framework analysis for Better Place.
Thank you, Abhimanyu. To ensure that Better Place is well suited to thrive in the EV charging infrastructure market, we have used Pestle analysis, Porter's 5 forces, SWOT analysis to study the environment. Moving to Pestle analysis and looking first at the political and legal situation in India, we can see that in its efforts to promote investment in the EV industry, the Indian government has introduced reduction in GST to 5%, subsidies such as reduction in the purchase price, registration fee, and even interest-free loans. Furthermore, there have been several policies in place like the Automotive Mission Plan, National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020, Smart City Initiative, and FAME, which has a total budgetary support for 100,000 million INR. The Indian market is our target because there is automatic approval for FDI in the automobile sector, and the government aims to achieve carbon footprint reduction as every other nation. Next, looking at the economy, we can see that the purchasing capacities of the middle class has been increasing. There is a diverse range of automobile companies in India with products in every segment, luxury, medium, or small. There is easy availability of finance at all levels, and its proximity to major export markets makes it even more lucrative. The social and environmental situation in India has been dynamic in nature, with consumers shifting to EVs. There are also several social initiatives that have been taken up to improve the living standards in India. India, having one of the youngest populations in the world, the youth in India are relatively technically sound, and the acceptability for newer products is increasing. And there's, of course, the lucrative and largely untapped market in rural India. Speaking about technology, India is making strides in its manufacturing capacity and has started to become an attractive destination for skill transfer. India is emerging as a center for automobile manufacturing and research, with millions of engineers graduating every year. High-quality hardware components are readily available as there is a large number of credible suppliers at the local level. As an emerging center for automobile manufacturing, India excels in its technical skills among the workers, as well as the labor costs are among the lowest in the world. Now, Srinidhi will take us through the Porter's 5 forces.
Thank you, Priyanka. Using the Porter's 5 forces to examine the external environment, first, we will look at the supplier power in the electric vehicle charging industry. Setting up public charging stations requires no licenses, and any individual is free to set them up provided the stations meet standards of the Power Ministry. Once the inspection is completed, the charging station can start offering services. The qualified personnel provide a clearance certifying that the station is ready to start servicing electric vehicles. Additionally, suppliers of construction and building equipment are abundantly available all over India, further proving that the supplier power is, in fact, a weak force. Next is buyer power. The buyer has relatively low power as firstly, they have limited expertise and power in the market. There are also very few experienced players in the market who act as OEMs for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This allows Better Place to gain a competitive advantage over them and permits the buyer less bargaining power. Furthermore, there is a lack of software and infrastructure. There are only 2,636 charging stations in India currently. This, paired with the increasing popularity and demand for electric vehicles, means India is in desperate need for more charging stations. Now, we look at the threat of substitutes. The main substitute to electric vehicles and charging stations are fossil fuel-powered automobiles. When comparing the running costs of each, electric vehicle charging is significantly cheaper than all 3 fossil fuels. Therefore, the threat of substitutes is not a strong force to the electric vehicle charging industry. Next is the threat of new entries. We can say that there is low threat of entry as firstly, there are very high entry costs.
The minimum investment to set up an EV charging station business in India is anything around 3 to 4 million Indian rupees. In addition to this, specialist knowledge is required to enter this field and gain a competitive advantage. Companies with economies of scale would enjoy cost advantages, and this would also prevent new entrants from surviving in this industry. Lastly, the competitor rivalry. As shown, these are the top 5 OEM electric vehicle charging solutions providers. There are about 25 players in the market currently, and some of them are OEMs and others are charge point operators. And now Adil will take us through the SWOT analysis of Better Place.
Thank you, Srinidhi. Starting with the strengths. Pre-existing proprietary technology in terms of battery swapping stations, charging spots, and auto OS are highly efficient. Better Place is well known for introducing battery swapping technology back in the 2009, and the technology still remains unchallenged. The company has well-established experience in setting up and integrating battery charging networks. The team culture is Better Place is more about collaboration and cooperation, using each other's expertise to ensure that the organization thrives. Moving on to the weaknesses, the failure of Better Place, even after raising $1 billion, has almost $1 billion has left a scar in the minds of the people and investors. Better Place lacks leaders who can turn the vision into profitable success. In order to meet the current demand, it is necessary to upgrade and scale up the software and the technology which is needed to provide faster charging in limited time. Now we move on to the exciting part, opportunities. The consumer's mindset towards EV have changed. Now there is an increased demand for EV due to lower cost, sleek vehicle design, and increased awareness of the environment. And with the increasing demand for EV, there has been a considerable increase in the number of EV manufacturers. Various governments across the world, and especially in India, are aiming to increase the investment through various means in EV charging infrastructure for paving the way for massive EV adoption by the public. There is a lack of B2B charging service providers in the market. And by outsourcing the charging infrastructure to Better Place, EV manufacturers are able to focus on their core activities and thus benefit from specialization. And finally, speaking of the threats, since EV charging infrastructure is a growing market, the competition will gradually increase in the market. Even though EV industry is growing, the pace of growth is still low. EV industry requires heavy capital in technology, R&D, and plant machinery. This reduces the number of EV players in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. After all our analysis, we will recommend Better Place to transform itself from B2C to B2B to efficiently satisfy the growing requirements of the industry, which will eventually position Better Place as the pioneers in EV charging infrastructure. We would also further recommend Better Place to effectively utilize proprietary technology to integrate EV charging infrastructure networks and, of course, ride the growing electric vehicles wave in India. So, in conclusion, Better Place will be most suited to become the backbone of the electric vehicle industry by using the experience and technical expertise in satisfying the electric vehicles charging infrastructure and integration needs of the market, rather than the already saturated electric vehicles market. Thank you.